One of the first things you're going to be doing with your support provider is taking a look at the continuum of teaching practice. The continuum of teaching practice is a description of each of the CSTPs, the California Standards for the Teaching Profession, and is organized by 5 levels of development, from emerging to innovating. The continuum of teaching practice was developed in such a way that it encourages reflective conversation between a support provider and their participating teacher. It can also be useful when determining short-term goals and assisting teachers in recognizing shifts in their developmental levels of teaching practice in response to teacher inquiry. You will find all of the CSTPs and aligning developmental levels listed on pages 5 and 6 of the Continuum of Teaching Practice. It is here that you will mark in the booklet indicating your developmental level and record evidence for why you determined that level in the space provided below each standard. We recommend that you start with Standard 6, Developing as a Professional Educator. In your initial assessment, you will be marking only the levels for each standard. Here is an example of what your booklet may look like during that conversation. Notice that there is a developmental level chosen as well as evidence listed indicating why you selected that level. If you select Emerging, you do not need to indicate any evidence at this time. These levels are cumulative, meaning that they build upon each other. We have created a user-friendly continuum spreadsheet to assist you in documenting the changes in developmental levels throughout the program year. It was created in Excel. Let's take a closer look at it. The first thing you will do is to download it from the RBO. It'll be located on the status record and the continuum section. The continuum teaching practice is the yellow part of the status record. You will click here for continuum teaching practice. You will download it to your desktop or your flash drive. We recommend that you change the name to indicate your first initial and last name. This will become important toward the end of the year when you upload the spreadsheet during the impact of inquiry. The first thing you're going to do is enter your name and agency. Then you're going to look at the initial assessment. Remember that you only marked your standards, so you'll enter the date of that conversation. And then you will continue on and use the drop-down menus to mark the standards only. If you do mark an element, it will tell you for the initial assessment, please only complete the standard levels. If you marked any level other than emerging, be sure that you include your evidence in the evidence column. After you have marked all of your levels, be sure to save your document on your hard drive or flash drive, as it will not be saved on the RBO, and you will revisit it several more times throughout your program year. You may also want to email a copy to your support provider. The next time you have a conversation with your support provider around the continuum of teaching practice will be during the preparing for inquiry phase. By this time, you will have selected one standard to look into deeper. You will mark each of your developmental levels for each of the elements within that standard. It is from this point that you will be able to determine a minimum of one element that will be aligned to the focus of your first inquiry. Here is an example of what your booklet may look like during this conversation. Notice that they've marked exploring and that they've also listed evidence for the reason they selected that developmental level. You would then reopen your saved continuum spreadsheet and you would mark your standard level and each element level within that standard. Remember, if you marked anything other than emerging, you would also want to include the evidence in the evidence column. The other times that you would use this spreadsheet is to indicate the change in developmental levels after each inquiry. You would enter the date following your inquiry, and you will continue by marking only the elements that you focused on during that inquiry. Remember that it is not uncommon that you would remain the same or even lower your level after an inquiry when you consider any changes that may have occurred in your environment during that time. Again, remember to include your evidence. If you are an SB 57 or a year 2, then you would have 2 inquiries to complete during this program year. You would enter your second date before your second inquiry in this cell, and then continue to select the standard that you would want to focus on. Again, you would want to look at each and every element within that standard. Again, the expectation is that you would include evidence if you marked anything other than emerging. At the end of your second inquiry, you would do the same thing you did after the first inquiry under Inquiry 2. After each recording of your spreadsheet, be sure that you save it back to your flash drive or your hard drive and send an email copy to your support provider. It is at the end of the program year that you will upload this document onto the status record on the RVO. Under Impact of Inquiry, you will see Continuum. Upload Final Continuum. That is referring to the Continuum spreadsheet. This may be new if you are a returning participating teacher. Here is where you would upload. Upload your files here. You would browse and it would locate the document on your computer and upload it. Again, be sure to save it as your first initial and your last name. We hope that you find this spreadsheet to be a useful tool to help you document and see changes in your developmental levels as you complete the process of inquiry this teaching year.